This is William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and I'd like to welcome you to the first hour of our study in Freshman English. The purpose of this course is to provide students with 120 hours of instruction in high school English. In this freshman year, we're going to be studying 3 different subjects in our English studies. First, we're going to study English composition. Second, English grammar. And third, English literature. For English literature, we're going to read ancient and classical literature, but in English translation. We're going to read it as English literature. We're going to read the works of Homer and Virgil. In English composition, we're going to study to become comfortable with composition. Many students in modern schools think of writing as a difficult and unpleasant study or activity, but we're going to see that English composition should actually be a very pleasant activity. You should be as comfortable writing as you are speaking with your family or friends. And we're going to learn how to think rightly about English composition or writing. And lastly, we're going to study the art of grammar as it applies to the English language. And we'll talk about these 3 different divisions of high school English: composition, grammar, and literature, all through our 4 years of high school English studies. So that's a quick overview of the plan for high school English and for freshman English in particular. We're going to have 120 hours of instruction time together as we work through this course, so there will be many subjects and topics we discuss, and I'd like to get right into our first lesson here in our first hour of study. So let's begin the first hour of freshman English, the actual content of this first hour, which will focus on getting started in English composition. In the lesson that you have available in the study center for this course, you'll see that there is a PDF copy of a few pages of the English composition book that I use with students in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. We're going to read through the first 3 sections of that English composition book and discuss the basics of getting started in English composition. If you're wondering, why would we start this course? Why would we start this English course with a study of composition? Why not get started with literature or with grammar? The reason is that composition is simple communication. Just as much as you like to speak and share stories with your relatives or friends, so you should learn to think of composition. That's really all composition is communicating with others through writing. When we study language in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, we learn that there are objects around us in the world. There are objects, physical objects, and there are spiritual objects. Some of them are visible, some of them are invisible. Some can be touched, some cannot be touched. And we go on learning about the 5 senses and objects that can be perceived with our senses, and then other things that we're just conscious of but cannot perceive. We learn this in the very earliest English grammar courses in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. It's one thing, however, for us to perceive or be conscious of an object, But what happens when we wish to share our ideas with others? That's where study becomes very important. It's very difficult, almost impossible, to share ideas with others without studying, without learning how language works, without learning vocabulary and definitions of words. It's very difficult to share ideas. When we perceive an object with our senses, our minds create a mental image or a notion. We could call it an idea. An idea is almost like a photo or video that's kept on file in our minds. And we think of these images in our minds, these ideas. And Aristotle, the famous Greek philosopher, taught that the objects that men perceive are all the same. We all see the same sun, the same trees, the same oceans, the same sky. We look around and see the same people. The things that we actually perceive as human beings are all the same. And our ideas, Aristotle says, are also the same. The ideas that our minds produce and store are the same among men. And yet, in order to share these ideas with others or to communicate about them, we have to use words. Spoken words are symbols or signs of ideas. Spoken words are signs of ideas. If I wish to share an idea with another person, I need to use words to share that idea. But the problem is, I need to make sure that the person I am speaking with understands the words that I use to share my ideas. And this is where communication becomes difficult. The objects in the world around us are the same. The mental images that we have of them when we've perceived them are the same. But when we begin to speak about these images in our minds, these ideas, the words in the minds of different people may have different meanings or may signify different ideas, and this leads to confusion. And so we need to study, all men need to study, to learn to communicate according to certain rules and using certain definitions so that we're able to share ideas clearly without any confusion. It takes a lot of work because speaking and sharing ideas is actually very difficult. But it's pleasant. We like to speak with others. We like to talk. In making this video, I'm speaking, and it's very pleasant. I'm relaxed and comfortable, and speaking is enjoyable. And the same is true of writing, because writing is simply putting down on paper or typing on a computer with written words what we would say with spoken words. Normally, when we write, it's because we can't speak to someone directly. And since we can't speak to the person, we put our thoughts down in writing. We use written words as signs of our spoken words, the words that we would have said if we could speak to the person. So ideas are signs of objects that we perceive or things that we're conscious of. Words, spoken words, are signs of our ideas. When we speak, we share words, we share signs of our ideas. And when we write, all we're doing, it's very simple. When we write, all we're doing is sharing our spoken words with written words. And so writing should be just as comfortable, just as pleasant, just as personal as speaking would be if we think of composition rightly. And that's our goal. In our English courses, we want to learn to think of composition rightly, to focus on what we think, what we say. Because if we can think and speak clearly, writing is very easy. And most students who have trouble writing are actually having trouble thinking and speaking. And so we want to understand how to write well so that we can think and speak rightly and simply write down what we would say if we were able to speak to the other person. And in our English composition lessons, we're going to learn how to do that. So let's get started in this English composition lesson we have, and let's just read through the text together and discuss some of the basic ideas in this first lesson. As I said at the beginning of this lesson, we're going to study the first 3 parts of this English composition book, which we have available on our lesson page. The topic of the first part of our study of English composition is expression of ideas arising from experience. Expression of ideas arising from experience. So we're not talking about ideas that are invented and shared like imaginary ideas, fiction, and stories like that. We're talking about expressing ideas that we've gained from our actual experiences in life. Expressing ideas arising from experience. And we'll see why that's important in this lesson. The first part of this study, the first part of part 1 of this English composition book is titled Pleasure in Expressing Ideas. Pleasure in expressing ideas. Let's read through this text together. I recommend that you open to the lesson page and follow along. So if you need to take a minute and open up to that page so you can read along, just pause the video, go and find the page, get it all ready, and when you're all set up, go ahead and play the video and we'll read this together. Part 1 in English composition, pleasure in expressing ideas. Though we all enjoy talking, we cannot write as we talk, nor do we find the same pleasure in writing that we do in talking. We seldom talk about topics in which we are not interested. Remember that. We seldom talk about topics in which we are not interested in, and concerning which we know little or nothing. We seldom talk about topics in which we are not interested, and concerning which we know little or nothing. We don't talk about things we don't know about. We don't talk about things we're not interested in. We talk about things we are interested in. We talk about things we do know about, things we're interested in, things we do. But we often have topics we're not interested in and topics we don't know much about assigned to us in school as subjects for compositions. So one of the reasons why writing is often difficult for students is because schools and teachers in schools assign topics for students to write about that they're not interested in or that they don't know anything about. We're assigned topics to write about that we would never talk about. And this is one of the reasons why writing is often difficult for us. Under such conditions, it is no wonder that there is little pleasure in writing. The ideas that we express orally through speaking are those with which we are familiar and in which we are interested. And we tell them because we wish to tell them to someone who is likewise interested and desires to hear what we say. Such expression of ideas is enjoyed by all. We love speaking to our family and to friends and to other people we become acquainted with. We like to speak to others. We speak to them about things we're interested in. We speak to them about things we believe that they are also interested in. And we usually stick to topics that we know something about. If we but choose to express the same kinds of ideas and for the same reason, there is an equal or even greater pleasure to be derived from the expression of ideas in writing. If we choose to express the same kinds of ideas that we like speaking about, and for the same reason, there is an equal or even greater pleasure to be derived from the expression of ideas in writing rather than speaking. It is the purpose of this book to show you how to express ideas clearly and effectively, and at the same time to enjoy doing it. It is the purpose of this book to show you how to express ideas clearly and effectively, and at the same time enjoy doing it. So as we read that first section, I'd like you just to take a minute and think about the things that you speak about with others. You might want to pause the video and just think about it. Think about your conversations with other people. Think about what you talk about with your parents or with your brothers and sisters or your friends. What kind of topics do you talk about? What have you talked about with others today? What did you talk about yesterday? Think about what you talk about and ask whether or not this lesson is true. Did you talk about things that you're interested in and like to think and talk about? Did you talk about things that you know a lot about or think a lot about? You'll see that the topics that you speak about with other people are these kinds of topics. Things you're interested in, things they're interested in, things you know about, things that you like to do. That's one of the reasons why speaking is pleasant. But now, think about things you've written about. Think about school assignments that you've had in the past where you've been asked to write about different topics. And ask yourself the same question. Were you assigned to write about topics that you're interested in? Or were you assigned to write about topics that you really weren't interested in and that you didn't think other people would be interested in either? Were you asked to write about topics that you already know a lot about? Were you asked to write about topics that you've studied and learned about before? Or were you asked to write about topics that you really didn't know what to say? You really didn't have anything to say about those topics, and so you found it hard to write about them because you didn't know what to say. You didn't know much about those topics. You'll see that what this book teaches us is true. And that is one of the problems with writing classes, is that teachers often ask students to write about topics that they would never talk about. And in our writing exercises, in our writing studies, we're going to try to avoid that mistake. We're going to make sure that when we write about a topic, it's a topic we're interested in. It's a topic we know about. And when you select a topic to write about, if you're given a choice, you should always select a topic that you're interested in and that you can write about, that you know about. That's an important part of writing, choosing the right topics to write about. So in this first part of this first lesson, we learn about pleasure in expressing ideas and why it's pleasing to express ideas, because we talk about things that are interesting to us and that we know a lot about. And we talk to people who have the same interests as we do. And that's why talking is pleasant. And writing is often not pleasant because we write about topics we're not interested in. And we don't necessarily write to people that we want to talk to or that we think are interested in the same things we are. Remember that this first part closed with the sentence, "It is the purpose of this book to show you how to express ideas clearly and effectively, and at the same time to enjoy doing it." That's all for part 1. Let's go on and read part 2. The title of part 2 is Sources of Ideas. Sources of Ideas. We must have ideas, that is, mental images in our minds, things to talk about. We must have ideas before we can express them. We can't express ideas that we don't have. We must have ideas before we can express them. There are 3 sources from which our ideas arise. There are 3 sources of ideas. Make sure you pay attention to this carefully. 3 sources of ideas. We may gain our ideas from experience. We may gain our ideas from experience. This is the first source of ideas. The first source of ideas is from experience, things we do, things we have experienced. Second, we may recombine ideas into new forms by the imagination. We may recombine ideas into new forms by the imagination. Our imagination, which is a power of our minds, our imagination allows us to think about things that we have never experienced. We can't think about things we've never experienced at all. It's impossible to think about things that we have never perceived. But our minds can combine ideas to create new ideas, and this is the work of the imagination. So, for example, I'm sure you know what the color red looks like, and you know what a horse is. But you've never experienced or seen a red horse. But you can imagine a red horse by combining these ideas of red color and horse. You can combine ideas that have come from your experience, and you can basically create new ideas in your mind by your imagination. This is the second source of ideas. The second source of ideas is the imagination. The third source of ideas is from communication with others. Our book reads, "We may receive ideas from others through the medium of language, through language, either by conversation or by reading. We may receive ideas from others through language, by conversation, or by reading." So we learn that there are three sources of ideas: our own experiences, our imagination, and our communication or language. These are the three sources of ideas: experience, imagination, and communication. Our book goes on and reads, "Every day we add to our knowledge through our senses." Every day we add to our knowledge through our senses. We see, we hear, we do. And so we acquire ideas about things. Every day we add to our knowledge through the senses. We see things, we hear things, we do things, and so we acquire ideas about all of these different things. These are the ideas that we gain through experience, and by far, the greater part of expression has to do with such ideas. Most of our communication has to do with ideas that we have gained from experience. The first chapter of this book, we're told, is concerned with the expression of ideas that come to us because of our experience. The first chapter of this book is concerned with the expression of ideas that come to us because of our experience. We may, however, think about things that have not actually occurred. We may think about things that have not actually occurred. We may allow our minds to picture a football game that we have not seen, or to plan a story about a boy who never existed. Nearly everyone takes pleasure in such an exercise of the imagination. The second chapter of our book will have to do with the expression of ideas that come from the imagination. And thirdly, we also add to our knowledge through the medium of language. Through conversation and reading, we learn what others think. We learn about the ideas of other people. And it is often of value to restate these ideas. The expression of ideas acquired from communication is treated in the third chapter of this book. So we learn about three sources of ideas, and this is very important. Our ideas are influenced by our experiences, what we do. So you can see that if a person doesn't have much experience, if he always stays in the same place, if he always does the same things, if he always sees the same people and does the same activities, he's not going to have many ideas because he doesn't have many experiences. But if another person travels and does all different kinds of work, sees different kinds of people, is in different places, does all kinds of different activities, he's going to have much more experience and he's going to have more ideas than the other person. We also learned that we can use our imagination. We can combine ideas that are already in our minds and invent or create new ideas. This is the work of the imagination. We don't often do this because this takes time. There usually has to be a reason why we're doing this, like we're playing a game or writing a story or trying to imagine something for some reason that doesn't actually exist. This is the work of imagination. And then lastly, we can gain ideas from the experiences and imagination of other people. Other people can speak and write, and we, by listening to them and speaking with them and by reading what they write, we can gain ideas from their experiences and their imagination. So we can share ideas with others. So these are the three sources of ideas. Make sure you know each of these three ideas, these three sources. Make sure you understand what they are and what kind of ideas come from each of these three sources. Let's move on and read part 3 of this first lesson. We see the title of this third part is Advantages or Benefits of Expressing Ideas Gained from Knowledge. So if there are 3 different sources of ideas, if we can gain ideas from our experiences, we can gain ideas from our imagination, or we can gain our ideas from the experiences and imagination of other people. There are advantages to be gained from ideas that come from experience. The ideas that we get from experience give us certain advantages or benefits. Let's learn about them in this third part of this first lesson. Advantages of expressing ideas gained from experience. Young people sometimes find difficulty in writing. Young people sometimes find difficulty in writing because they, quote, have nothing to say, unquote. Young people sometimes find difficulty in writing because they say that they have nothing to say, that they don't know what to talk about, that they don't have anything to write about. But this is not true. This is not true, and this is one of the problems that we have to overcome in order to learn to write well, and we're going to focus on this in English composition. Young people sometimes find difficulty in writing because they have nothing to say. But such a reason will not hold in regard to ideas gained from experience. It's not true that you have nothing to say. Everyone has a multitude of experiences every day, every minute of every day. We all have a multitude of experiences, at least one of which is of sufficient interest to cause one of us to wish to tell it. The reason that we talk about things every day is because we do have interesting experiences. Much of what happens to you or to your friends, especially that which occurs outside of the regular routine of schoolwork, is interesting and worth telling. You experience all kinds of things every day that are interesting. Every day you have something that you can talk about, something you'd like to tell your parents about, or your brothers and sisters about, or your friends about. Every day there's something that you experience that's interesting and worth talking about. Experience furnishes or provides. Experience furnishes an abundance of material suitable for composition purposes. Experience furnishes an abundance of material suitable for composition purposes. So one of the reasons why people say that they don't have anything to say or they can't think of anything to write is because they're being asked to speak or write about things that they have not experienced. And that's part of the problem. But all of us have many interesting experiences every day. Experience furnishes an abundance of material suitable for composition purposes. But a greater advantage comes from the fact that the ideas that come from our experience are sure to be your own. No one else in the entire world has your experiences. Your experiences are what make you unique. Your unique experiences are what make communicating with you interesting. It's interesting to learn what you have experienced. It's interesting to hear you share your own experiences. You don't have to look outside of yourself to find interesting things to speak about and write about. You don't have to imagine interesting things to speak about or write about. You don't have to read other people's writings or rely on other people's conversation to have interesting things to speak and write about. Your own experiences are unique, and because they're unique, they're interesting. The advantage that we have in speaking and writing about our experiences is that they are our own. They're our experiences. This is the first requisite, the first required thing of successful composition. This is the first requirement, the first requisite of successful composition. And think of how simple it is. You simply need to share about your own experiences, and you automatically have interesting things to say and an endless supply of things to say. This is the first requisite of successful composition. To express ideas that are not your own is a mere copy work and seldom worth doing. In other words, to share ideas that are not your own is usually boring and unpleasant. So, the first benefit of sharing ideas or gaining ideas from our experiences is that our experience is building all day, every day. We always have an abundance of ideas that come from our experience. The second benefit is that the ideas that we discuss from our own experience are our own unique ideas, and that makes them valuable. The third benefit or advantage of ideas that come from our experiences are that the ideas are not only our own, but they are likely to be clear and definite. The ideas are likely to be clear and definite. Why is that? Because you know what you do. You know what you see. You did it. You saw it. You heard it. You felt it. You tasted it. The ideas gained from experience are valuable because you can talk about them clearly and definitely because you experienced them. So it's much easier to speak or write about something that you experienced than something you didn't experience. The ideas are not only your own, but they are likely to be clear and definite. You know what you do. You know what you see. Or if you do not, the effort to express it so that it will be clear to others will make you observe more closely for yourself. In other words, what that means is when you practice or try to communicate with others, even though you have experienced something, maybe you weren't paying attention. And so you really don't remember what you did, or you don't remember exactly what something looked like that you saw. Well, that's going to teach you to be more careful. It's going to teach you to pay more careful attention to things around you, to things that you see and hear and smell and taste and feel. Composition, sharing your ideas, is going to teach you to be more careful, to pay attention to your experiences. If you do not share information about things that you experience, the effort that you need to use to try to express it so that it will be clear to others will make you observe closely for yourself. You'll learn to pay more careful attention. Still, another advantage, a fourth advantage, comes from the fact that your experiences are not presented to you through the medium of language. You do not learn the ideas from your experiences through language. The experience itself furnishes the ideas, but you are left free to choose for yourself the words that best set forth what you wish to tell. Even though you've experienced certain things, when you wish to speak about them or write about them, you need to choose the words to use to share those ideas. Because the things of your experience are the ones with which you are most familiar, the words that best apply to those ideas are the ones that you most often use and whose meanings are best known to you. So when you share ideas about your experiences, usually those ideas are easy for you to speak about because the words are words that you always use. You're not trying to speak about something that you don't know about or haven't experienced. You may not even have the words to do that. But to talk about your experiences is much easier because you usually do know the words to speak about the things that you experience. Because experience supplies an abundance of interesting, clear, and definite ideas, because experience supplies an abundance of interesting, clear, and definite ideas, which are your own and which may be expressed in familiar language, it furnishes better material for training in expression than does either imagination or reading. So one thing this book teaches us that's very helpful, one of the reasons why I choose to teach composition from this book, is that it shows us that for us to learn how to speak and write well, the topics we write about have to be things that we experience. They have to be about our experiences. Our experiences are abundant, first of all, so it's easy to find topics. Our experiences are our own, so they're unique and interesting. Because we've experienced these things, we can think of them clearly and definitely. Fourthly, we're able to speak about them clearly because we have the words to speak about our ideas. We usually know the vocabulary, the words that relate to our experiences. All of these things make ideas that come from our experience the best to write about. And so a good composition course will allow us to write about our own experiences. And so our textbook teaches us that this is one of the main problems with other writing programs, is that students are asked to write about things they're not interested in, things that they don't know about. In our composition lessons, we're going to always make sure that you have the opportunity to write about things you are interested in, things you do know about, things you can write about, because they're things that come from your experience. So that's going to be a focus of the writing assignments that we do. And we're going to start writing assignments in a couple classes, not yet. So we've read through these first 3 parts of this lesson, which was our goal for this first hour of English studies. What I hope is as we get this course started, you now have some things to think about. Remember that there are 3 sources of ideas. This is very, very important. There are 3 sources of ideas. Your mind is constantly working. It's like a computer that's always running, always working, always listening, watching, hearing, smelling, feeling, and so on. Always working. Our minds are always working. They're always collecting ideas from the things that we experience. Not only that, but they're always joining ideas together, putting ideas together in new and creative ways, imagining new ideas, ideas that we've never experienced. Our minds are always perceiving things in our experiences, imagining things apart from our experiences, and learning, always paying attention to what other people are saying and writing, learning new ideas from other people's experiences, either from people around us or from people we study, books we read, movies we watch, and so on. Our minds are always collecting ideas. And in the work of composition, we simply want to learn to share those ideas. And the best way to start, we learned, is to begin with our own experiences. Those are the easiest ideas to write about. So that's a good summary of what we've covered in this first lesson and these first three parts of this book on English composition. We've talked about the sources of ideas, the pleasure that we have in expressing ideas, why writing is sometimes hard, and what the best way to learn to write is. It's by writing about ideas that come from our own unique experiences. So that's all for the content of this class, this first hour. We introduced this freshman English class. We said in this freshman English class we're going to study 3 different subjects, all of which relate to English. We're going to study English composition, we're going to study English grammar, and we're going to study English literature. And in this first hour, we began our study of English composition, and we simply discussed the study of writing, why it should be pleasant, and what we need to do to make it pleasant. And now as we get going with this course, we're going to continue to study and learn about the art of composition in English, but we're going to do so in a way that's pleasant and helpful, maybe even fun. And I look forward to teaching you how to do that, and I look forward to reading the work that you write and submit for grading. So that's going to be all for this first hour in freshman English. I hope that that was a helpful introduction to the course and to this first study in English composition. If you have any questions about this lesson or would like to talk about anything more, you can write me any questions you have by email. My email address is mail@classicalliberalarts.com. You can send me any questions you have anytime. Or after you complete these lessons in the high school degree program, you can go and study these courses in more detail in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. For example, we're going to move through this composition book pretty quickly. But if you want to really take your time and study through it carefully, work on the writing assignments more, and really learn about the art of English composition, you can do that in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy's English composition course. So if you want to learn more, if you want to study these lessons in more detail, you can do that through the separate courses that are available in the Academy. But for the high school diploma program, we're going to move pretty quickly through this lesson, just cover the basics, and make sure that you get credit for your high school studies, because high school requirements are pretty simple. And we want to make sure that for your high school diploma and transcript, we just cover those basics, check all the boxes, and give you the opportunity to show that you've done those studies. Above and beyond that, we can study anything that you'd like to, and you're encouraged to pursue the most challenging studies that you can. So we want to get this high school work finished and out of the way, and then pursue more challenging studies, more detailed studies, by studying through these courses on their own in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. So I hope that's helpful. That's our first hour in freshman English. Go back and watch this video, listen to this talk again if you'd like to, study the lesson in print, complete this lesson assessment, and we'll move on in our freshman English class into lesson 2. God bless your studies.